Today, we're digging into a story about incredible talent, huge barriers, and a name you probably should know but don't. Edna Guy, the dancer that history basically forgot.
So right off the bat, here's the puzzle at the heart of it all. This is an artist who performed at Carnegie Hall, one of the most famous venues on the planet, and yet her name has pretty much vanished. How does that even happen?
To figure this out, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll meet this forgotten pioneer. Then we'll dive into her art and a really complicated mentorship she had. After that, we'll investigate why she was written out of history. And finally, we'll talk about why her story is so incredibly important today.
Okay, so let's set the scene. When you think of the big names in Black modern dance from the 30s and 40s, you probably think of people like Katherine Dunham or Pearl Primus, right? Well, Edna Guy was right there with them, creating truly groundbreaking work at the exact same time.
So who was she, really? Edna Guy was a total trailblazer. Her thing was solo performances that mixed modern dance with these amazing Afro-Caribbean styles. And she was doing this at a time when Black dancers were just not welcome on the so-called serious stages.
So, what did she actually do on stage? What was her vision? Well, her list of accomplishments is, wow, it's pretty stunning.
I mean, just look at this. We're talking Carnegie Hall. She was creating and starring in her own solo shows, even touring internationally. And her work wasn't just about cool moves. It had depth. It tackled spirituality, social justice. She was literally building her own platform because the mainstream dance world just wouldn't give her one.
And get this, people noticed. She was getting amazing reviews in her own time. Critics were praising her for her emotional depth and, this is key, her authentic interpretation of Black cultural material. She wasn't just copying something. She was creating something new and vital from her own heritage.
And that is the absolute game changer here. Her work didn't just entertain people. It helped legitimize entire art forms. She was proving to the world that African and Caribbean dance weren't just some quaint folk traditions. No, they were powerful, complex forms of art that belonged on the world's biggest stages.
But, it's not a simple story. There are always complications. And Edna Guy's story has a fascinating one. It's all about her relationship with her famous teacher, Ruth St. Denis. And it is a total paradox of opportunity and, well, appropriation.
So somehow, Guy gets into the Denishawn School, which was basically the center of the universe for American modern dance at the time. For a Black dancer in the 1920s, this was almost impossible. It gave her a stamp of approval, technically speaking, and put her in the room with people who would go on to define the future of dance.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Look at the contrast here. On one side, you have Edna Guy doing authentic work from her own culture, but facing these huge barriers. And on the other, you have her teacher, Ruth St. Denis, a white woman who is famous for creating so-called Oriental dances inspired by other cultures. So St. Denis was this gatekeeper who also opened the gate a tiny crack for Guy. And it just shows you the deep, deep ironies of that world.
Which brings us right to the heart of the mystery. With all this talent, all this praise, this high-profile connection, how on earth did she just fade from our history books? Let's crack this case.
It wasn't just one thing. It was like a perfect storm of systemic failures. She got overshadowed by other dancers who managed to find more solid support. She was locked out of the major dance companies that could have preserved her work for the future. But the real killer? It was the almost complete lack of documentation. And this is so important because the lack of records isn't just some an unfortunate mistake. It's the evidence. It tells a story all on its own. It shows how systemic racism didn't just limit her opportunities while she was alive, it worked to erase her legacy after she was gone. Think about it. Whose work gets saved? Whose story gets told? Those are never neutral questions.
If you need one single number to understand how total this erasure was, here it is. 0. There are 0 known film recordings of Edna Guy dancing. Her entire art form, everything she created with her body, is just gone. We can read about it, but we can never, ever see it. So you might be asking, why dig all this up? Why does it matter to tell the story of an artist we can't even watch anymore? Well, it matters because her story isn't just about her.
Her story really represents a whole lost generation of Black artists. See, she wasn't some lone genius in a vacuum. There were many others like her making incredible work who were also denied the resources, the documentation, and ultimately a place in our history books. Her absence points to a much bigger hole in our culture. You can see the tragic cycle here, right? A brilliant pioneer is overlooked. Their work isn't saved, so it disappears. Then, the history that we all learn is incomplete. It's wrong. And that means it's up to us now to actively go back and recover these stories, to try and get a truer picture of our own past.
And that's the question I want to leave you with. Edna Guy's story had to be pieced together from these scattered little clues in the archives. It just makes you wonder how many other brilliant artists, how many other Edna Guys are out there just waiting for someone to find them and tell their story.